Actually, one of the things that I want to get to, which seems to be an issue that's in Chinatown or in the Chinese-Canadian community now, is redress. And Head Tax Chinese Exclusion Act redress is a part of the community, and we're discussing it. And first of all, I'd like to run a short video of Daniel Lee, who's the president of the Army, Navy, Air Force veterans, stating their position. His statement was videoed at the Chinese Cultural Center on April the 7th. So, let's roll the video. The Chinese Benevolent Association of Vancouver held a head tax forum for the public at the Chinese Cultural Center. While there is no shortage of opinion on how this redress issue, head tax, and Chinese Exclusion Act should be tackled, there are a lot of good ideas, and many speakers came out and talked about them. Here's Dan Lee at the Head Tax Forum.
Injustices, indignities, hardships, and thoughtless discriminations of many kinds were our forebears' lot. And we think an apology is long, long overdue. An apology would mean an expression of regret by our country, which the implication that we are wanted as Canadians with full and equal rights of citizenship. A genuine apology is all that is needed to lay the rest of this head tax issue along with our ancestors.
Hi, we're back, and now we'd like to sort of go through what exactly is this position from the Army, Navy, Air Force Veterans Unit number 280. As I understand, the position is a consensus position and was voted upon by all the membership. Very briefly, I'd like to ask Mr. Ma how it is that the Army, Navy, Air Force veterans decided to come up with a position on this.
Well, both legally and morally, we are on very, very weak ground to ask for individual compensation. Legally, we cannot hold progeny responsible or penalize for the mistakes or injustices perpetrated by their forebears. If you appear before a judge, try to convict the grandchildren for the crime committed by their grandparents, no judge would convict. So legally, we don't have a leg to stand on. Morally, we feel that the case is very weak too, because the people who had paid the head tax were not forced to do it. They had an option. They put the sign up. The Canadian government put the sign up and said, if you want to come into this country to make a living, pay a head tax. It's more or less similar to a golf club, private golf club, hanging up a sign, entrance fee or membership fee, $5,000. If you join our club, you're entitled to all the privileges and enjoy the use of the facilities within our headquarters. Now, after you have enjoyed the blessings and benefits of joining the club, for 10 or 15 years later, you ask for your money back. I don't think morally that's right. The same thing in this case. The people who had paid head tax enter Canada to seek a better livelihood because the country, the ancestral country, was impoverished. Very difficult to make a living. Now, Canada gave us an opportunity for them to make a living, and they did so. They came in here, and some of them did very well. They sent money home to support the family members. Those who had families here, their children have grown up and made a niche for themselves and have distinguished themselves in various areas of society. And right now they're enjoying all the blessings and benefits of all the social programs and what the country has to offer them. And then we come back and ask them, hey, give us our money back. You think that's fair? Now, to give you an example, they say one of the arguments is that yes, but they didn't impose the head tax on the Japanese nor the Indo-Canadians. That's true. What happened in that case was even when we were young, there were very, very, very few Indo-Canadians in this country. They came in trickles. I'd say in Victoria, where I lived, there were tens of thousands of Chinese, whereas there were only maybe a few scores of Indo-Canadians. And Japanese, they were only a few hundred. They didn't come in, in floods, in exodus, like the Chinese people did. So what the Canadian government proposed to the Qing dynasty, Qing government, was that, okay, if you could limit your people to a certain quota, say 1,000 a year, and then we would eliminate the head tax. But the Chinese government hem and haw and didn't give them a positive answer. So what the Canadian government did was to raise the head tax from $50 to $100. When that didn't stop them from coming in, they jack it up to $500. So what happened is, when a trickle become a flood, the people in this country become alarmed. They thought that the national interest was threatened, whether that threat was real or perceived, but to the people of that time, you see. They say the Chinese come in to take our job. They were willing to work for 25 cents an hour, whereas we won $1 an hour. So they were afraid. And when they're afraid, you can't be responsible for their reaction. Even today, look at today, the United States tell China is shipping the textile products to the United States to the tune of $1 billion a year. So the United States government tell China, look you either voluntarily cut down your quota or else we will withdraw the most favored nation treatment to you.
Okay. If I can accept, Roy, the fact that the head tax, morally and legally, maybe it's difficult to get ground in. But the other thing that we're dealing here with is the Chinese Exclusion Act. Now, we're dealing with people that are here already, not allowed to reunite their families, not allowed to bring in wives and children. Now, that was quite insidious.
Yes, well, that's could be explained. Today, we're living in a multicultural society, and we say that's double standard. That violates our Charter rights and freedom. But in those days, don't forget, in those days, we were living in a unicultural society. It was no more than a British-dominated colony. We don't even have our own national flag. We don't even have our national anthem. We don't even have our Constitution. Our flag was the Union Jack. Our national anthem was God Save the King. And our Constitution was rested in Westminster in London. So you got to understand the prevailing social and political climate of the time. 90% of the population were British. The people from the prairies, even they were of Ukrainian background, when they come out to BC, they don't have a chance. I had a friend came out here, his name was Letowski. He had to change it to Nelson to get a job, to make a living. And that was the social climate of the time. You got to understand that.
Yeah. Well, just getting back to that, as I said, the Army, Navy, Air Force veterans position is a consensus position, but it seems that in talking to members there, everyone sort of has their own little differences within that position, although it is supportive of that position. I'd like to talk to Harry Kahn about that, because Harry has probably a position which is a little more extreme, and I'd like to go through with that. Harry, if you could explain to me.
No, I speak to you as a member of the Army Navy vet. I'm also speaking to you as a member of Chinese Freemason. Chinese Freemason of Canada as a whole. Now, our position, same as the veterans group, our position. Chinese Freemason is one of the oldest organizations in Canada. We have 128 years of history, almost same time grow up as Canada. So therefore, the pioneer that pay head tax, most of our members belong to Chinese Freemason. But today we look under present eye, under this generation, that's under present way of looking at it, because we have all the rights. Naturally, we say the law, the immigration policy at those days, the head tax, this immigration regulation against the Chinese, naturally are unjust, are unfair, no doubt about it. But as Roy said, in those days, they're under white man's rule. They could do whatever they want. We are not only we are worse than the native Indians, but we still want to come to this country to make our living, and hoping someday we'll go back to China and retire. Now, in the old days, different from now. In the old days, our philosophy say that even though tree could go 1,000 feet tall, the leaf always falling down to the ground. But that means even though we come to Canada, make a living, someday, even we die, the body have to step back to China. That's the old philosophy. But now, today, it's changed. Today, we say, our root grows here. Our children will be part of Canada, part of Canadian. That's different way of thinking, different way of philosophy. But we look back to the history, As one day, I talked to one of the members. He told me, the way he say, it's a true fact. He told me, if my grandfather didn't pay the $500 head tax, today I won't be here. Today my children have no opportunity to go to university and become a doctor, become an accountant. I'm very thankful. My grandfather paid that $500, and he built the seeds. Today, I could enjoy. My children, I myself, although it's hard, the work is hard, it's hard life here to work my living, to bring up my children. But I'm better than my father. My father better than my grandfather. So under this way of thought, this way of thinking, we will appreciate, that the Canadian government should recognize, make a public statement, recognize our pioneer, the great job they done for this country. Although you want to say apology, or you want to say that we want the Canadian government to make some type of public statement to make it in record that Chinese, our pioneers, did the great job, also contribute in building Canada as today.
Well, that seems to be a good part in terms of what we want for redress. It seems to say the recognition
Yes, right.
of what these head taxpayers did, the recognition of the fact that these laws, yes, were unjust or morally or whatever the case is, but on the other hand, there are still head taxpayers alive, and they want their money back. And the reason I think it is that $500 was an awfully lot of money at that time. And I was talking to Mr. Wong earlier, and I was just wondering if you could put that $500 into perspective, the way that you told me about it.
Well, I was back to our ancestral village last October, and I dare say that to raise $1,000 Canadian money plus boat fare and other expenses, you couldn't do it today. There was $1,000 for my mother and father in 1906, so that must be at least double, in order to be enough to come to Canada. But anyway, that was a tremendous hardship, and I remember my mother and father arguing about $10 extra to send back to China for New Year's, and I was then in first year high school, 13, 14 years old, and as far as I can recollect, it took them 20 years to pay back that money. The exact amount I don't really know. I would have to guess about $2,500. So it was tremendous hardship, and I also I respect what Mr. Khan and Mr. Ma said that, about the legality of asking for the money, but it seems that the $500 head tax was imposed only on the Chinese, possibly because of fear against a race that's different from them, and to impose the Exclusion Act of 1923 for a period of 25 years left a tremendous gap in the Chinese community that I think the Chinese community would have a better bridge between your generation that came after the war and our generation that was born here. As you realize, Sid, there's a tremendous gap. We didn't have the ones that were younger brothers and cousins or whatever, nephews that were too free to come and go. As a matter of fact, when I went there last year, I met one of my cousins for the first time, and I was then 67 years old because of the restrictions. And I did mention to you, Sid, that the $23 million that was paid by 81,000 Chinese immigrants today would be in excess of $1 million as far as if you correlated at 10% and doubling itself every 7 years or 8 years, whatever the case may be, and that very soon will double to $2 billion. Those are the figures that were given to me by one of the interpreters this channel.
Well, Mr. Wong, this seems to me like very much like a position of those that are talking about they want some kind of individual compensation. They want some kind of individual apology, and they want a community fund or something. We're going to go to a videotape here now, and we're going to roll the videotape, and what I have is a bunch of streeters and people that we've talked to at the different meetings, and they're going to explain different and innovative ways perhaps where the head tax and Chinese Exclusion Act might be redressed.